Well, there was a soldier, and he was tired. Have you ever been tired? He was not only tired, he was hungry. You ever get hungry? He hadn't eaten for a couple of days. Any of you got not eaten for a couple of days? Oh, the hands went down, huh? So he was done with the war, and he was walking home. And home was a long, long way. And as he walked, he was tired. And what else was he? Hungry. And as he walked, his feet were tired. And then he saw lights from a town, and he was all excited because that meant what? He could see some people, and if there were people, maybe he could eat food, right? So he went up to the first door that he came to, and he knocked on the door. And a man came to the door, and he said, "Yes, sir, I'm a soldier, and I'm coming home, and I'm very hungry. Could you spare some food?" He said, "We don't have any food to spare," and he slammed the door on him. Well, he went to the next door, and he knocked on the door, and a woman was coming. Well, that's a better idea, right? Because women like to cook, right? And when she got there, he said, "Could you spare some food? I'm a hungry soldier coming home." And guess what? She said, "We don't have anything we can share. We hardly have enough food in our cellar to get through the winter ourselves, so we can't help you in any way." He was discouraged. You ever get discouraged? He was sad. But he saw another house, so he thought he'd go to that house. And so he went up to the house, and he said, "Could you spare some food?" And they said, "Are you kidding?" And they slammed the door. Wasn't very nice. And was he tired still? And he was hungry still, and he had to think about something. Now, he was walking a little ways, and when he got a little farther, he saw a well. Have you ever heard of a well? And there was this big pot, and there was this big pot, and it was next to a big rock, and it had one of these little ladles, and he filled it all up with water, because at least he could have water. And as he was drinking, he started thinking, "I got a good idea." He looked around, and he looked, and he saw a rock or a stone, and he said, "I think I'll make some stone soup." Does that sound good to you? Well, it did to him. So he threw that in the water. And as he threw it in, people were watching him. They thought maybe something was wrong. They were giving him some funny eyes, and people in the village, they started to gather around him, just like you're gathered around me. And he went into the water, and he went, "Is that ever good? That's a magic stone. That made the best soup. Oh, but I wish I had some salt." "Oh, would you share that with me? Boy, that would be really, really good. I need that cell phone that tells me what else is in the soup." Okay. I don't think he said that. I bet he didn't have a cell phone like me about what he wanted in his soup. And then he said, "Oh, I wish I had some rice for my soup." "Oh, that would be really good." And then he said, "Oh, but you know what? Let me just try it. It's so clear. I wish I had some tomato sauce." "Oh, bring some tomato. And that looks homemade too. How nice of you to share that with my soup." Soup's getting better, isn't it? And then he tasted it, because that tomato sauce went in there. I have to do it again. Thank you. And he said, "Oh, I just wish I had some garlic or green beans." "Oh, you got green beans? You've got garlic? Oh, please bring that." And then he said, "Oh, but I need a little more body in it." "Thank you. That was so nice of you. It looks like it came from the Good News Farm, too. Wow. And that is wonderful. Thank you. You're really into garlic." Okay. And then he thought, "I'd really like a bell pepper." "Oh, and I thought about corn, too. How about corn?" Oh, there's some corn. Well, let me see. Kidney beans. Don't you think everything's better with kidney beans? Oh. And how about an onion? No, I'm not opening the can. Just throw it all in. Let me see. And a tomato. That would really make it taste really good. Oh, right. Please bring up your tomato. Is there anything I'm missing? Oh, good. You what? Oregano. Well, we're going to leave the oregano out, but let me try it. What do you think? Do you think it tastes good now? Let me try. Oh, I can't believe this. This tastes like my mother's recipe. And all the people stood around looking at him and smelling the soup. It was wafting over the fire. And he thought, oh, would I like some of that soup all those people thought? And he said, you know what? There's enough for all of us. Let's share. And so all the people got their bowls, and they sat around singing and laughing and eating, and they were happy. And you know what the moral of the story is? We may have just one little thing, maybe one little dime would make a better offering, because when we all share together, it's a bigger offering. Maybe we just have one little pot to bring to potluck, but when everybody brings their food, then there's more to share. And if you didn't come to my children's story, I would have been all alone up here. So I appreciate that you all came. We are all better because we are all together. We are a community, and it takes a village to make a church.
name was not in the program, but this is my friend Paris. So, Carlo and Paris.
Is this on? I guess. Okay. What a blessing to have such beautiful, beautiful instruments and artists in our congregation. It's not on. Oh, okay, we're good. Okay, we are going to go to the scripture reading today, which is in Matthew, and it says 4:19, and I'm going to start with 18 to get us in context. It's on page 1114 in your pew Bibles. And Jesus, walking by the Sea of Galilee, saw two brothers, Simon, called Peter, and Andrew, his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. Then he said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." Amen. This is the end of our scripture reading.
Well, welcome, friends who are my village, and thank you for helping me with stone soup. It's really hard to make without all of you. There was a book that Hillary Clinton wrote, and it was called It Takes a Village. And she talks about it takes a village to raise a child. She says that when there are people all over who care for sick children, and there's people in your community with special needs, it really takes a village to help one another. And I really believe that that's what the Lord wants for us. Let's open Matthew 18:3. Let's open to Matthew 18:3. Are there only going to be children in heaven? Are you sure? Yes. Let's read this. Matthew 18:3 says, "I tell you the truth, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven." So what is the answer? We're all children if we're going to enter the kingdom of heaven. And we have a responsibility to help one another in our communities, do we not? It doesn't matter whether we are witnesses or role models or mentors or teachers or preachers or just people in the neighborhood who love people and are considerate of them. We also have a responsibility to tell them in a way that they will be loved into the truth of the Lord Jesus Christ. Am I right? There was a person who had a new change in his minister, and I remembered that they were telling me that they really hated their last pastor, and I said, "I can't imagine that you hate anybody." "Well, you know, all he does is the fire and brimstone type thing. Then let's just say we hate having him there." I said, "Oh, but you have a new person now. Does that mean that he just gives you lessons on love and it's just a really gooey feeling and wonderful?" And they said, "No, he still gives us lessons that if we sin that we might go to hell, but he acts like he's sorry about it." The way that we minister to people and witness is a big deal, is it not? In my family, there was a village, and I want you to help me with who that was. My mother lived in the Detroit area. She went to high school there. Mike Illich, you know that name? That was one of her classmates. And she did not have a very good home life. She was unhappy with her mother. Her mother was always irritated at her, she felt. And there was someone who came to their door. Now, some of us don't like going door to door, but there are people out there that can only be found by going door to door. And this lady was a Bible worker, and she came to the door, and she knocked on the door, and she asked if it would be possible for her to give Bible studies to them. And my grandmother, she loved to talk. I don't know that she got a word in edgewise during the Bible studies, but she had a great time in the Bible studies. And the woman looked at my mother, who also decided that she would study, and she showed a big interest in my mother. And she said, you know, I believe that you should go to a Delphian Academy. That would be a great place for you. Well, my mom was looking forward to running away from home in some way, and so that just fit the bill very well. And she went to the academy, and she was befriended so warmly by the faculty there. She was given a roommate, Dorothy, that she just loved. And on the weekends, since nobody visited my mother always went home with Dorothy. My mother was in love with a Delphian, and she soon became a baptized member. Who was my mom's village? How about the Bible worker that came to the door? I'm so glad she did, because I don't know, where would I be? And how about the people that were so warm to her at the school? You know, it's not always about our doctrines. Sometimes it's about how we warm people up. And also, what about Dorothy that took her home and became her family? And that was really very much like my adopted family. I am very, very thankful. My father grew up in the Detroit area in a Polish Catholic family, a large Catholic family. And my grandmother was talking to someone, a Mr. Marcos, who they just really adored, that they worked with, who told them about the Adventist faith. Now, my grandma and grandpa only went to the Catholic Church, but they studied the Bible with this man, and they felt somewhat committed. But when my grandma got it in her head that she could save her boys from World War II, she thought, if I get them all baptized, I could be conscientious objectors. So she marched them all to a tent meeting, and I don't know what happened, but they all got baptized. Now, my dad, it really took. All of his brothers, it really didn't take. But you know, it doesn't matter how you get there. He became an Adventist throughout his life, and they were certainly an impression to me. Who was my dad's village? Mr. Marcos? Who else? I don't know, maybe the people who baptized him, that might have been nice, but they started the first church in Plymouth, Michigan, so that was the beginnings of the Plymouth Adventist Church in Michigan. And I attended a Southfield Junior Academy where I knew the Schulls from, and we grew up there. We were a big school. Wasn't there about 350 kids at Southfield Junior Academy? And I was significantly impacted by my youth pastor. He asked me if I would give the week of prayer, and I remember my legs shaking, and I just was so scared to sit up in front. And Jim Ayers said, "You can do it, you can do it." And then my pastor's wife, she loved us kids. She looked us in the eye. She talked to us. We'd ask her all kinds of questions that we'd never ask our parents. And we loved her. And when I went to a Bible camp up at Camp Asaba, where a lot of lives are changed, there was a retreat for us school kids. And I remember kneeling down on the beach out there by Camp Asaba and asking the Lord to come into my heart, and I really wanted to change. I didn't want to be the silly Lori anymore. I really wanted God in my heart. I don't know what your experience is, but I suppose that you have a wonderful experience too, that you need a testimony to tell to people. So hopefully you've thought about it so you can share it, because it is really inspiring. By the way, the man that was at that Bible retreat, his name was Pastor Jake Duran, and later I found out from my husband after I married him that that was his Bible teacher. Isn't that a small world? And Elder Ayers, Jim Ayers, was in the King's Heralds. Remember the base? We used to love, before he became our pastor, to talk to him at camp when he was a camp counselor. We'd say, "Hello, Mr. Ayers," and he'd go, "Hello." And then he became the bass and my pastor, so that was great. My husband, Royce, could tell a completely different story because he's very different. I shouldn't say that with the Langinis here. But my husband grew up in South Africa. And his parents were farmers. His grandparents were farmers, and they went shopping in town. Now, South Africa is a very big country. And they went in to get supplies, and they were so tired that when they saw this tent meeting, they sat down at the back just to get themselves cooled off. Now, my dad really got himself cooled off when he went to a tent meeting, but they just sat there and fanned themselves, and it was the ending of the meeting, and the pastor came from the front to the back, shook their hands, got their names, got their address. They were overwhelmed, said, "I'd love to study with you." He came to study with them several times, but they were not convicted. They worked on the farm. They could not see in South Africa how you could make a living without working on Sabbath. For many years, they worked the farms, and for many years, this pastor continued to come visit him. How many of us give up? How many of us, if they aren't happy with us the first time, it's over? But he made a friendship with them. He continued to come to their house, and pretty soon, they decided they had to move to a safer area in South Africa. It was 7 hours by train where they moved. I don't remember the name of the town. But they moved, and do you know that pastor, what do you think? He got on the train for 7 hours and would continue to visit them. And year after year, I think it was 8 years, he labored with them. One time their windows were open and they heard him say on the steps as he was leaving, "Almost convicted, almost persuaded." And he died only a few months after that. Well, guess what? Do people always come into the truth when people are alive? There are going to be mothers and fathers that are going to be so enthralled when they see their loved ones in the kingdom, aren't they? And they decided that they needed to make a commitment, and they gave up the farming business, and they started doing something else, and they committed their lives, and they became Seventh-day Adventist Christians for the first time. I'm really glad that their village was persistent. There was only one person in their village, and that was that loyal pastor. What a surprise it will be to him when he meets them in heaven. And they started churches. They became wonderful witnesses, and that's how my husband became an Adventist, through the understanding of his grandparents. Well, I also know that many of you have stories, and we don't have time for all of them, but I'm going to ask some ladies to come up here and join me. That would be Carolyn, Chris, Anna, Jerry, and Wendy. Maybe you can come up here. We all have a story. How many of you know that you have a story? Come on up. Just have a seat on the podium up there. And Carolyn, you can stay with me. How many of you know you have a testimony that it would be impressive to tell other people? And some of you, if you say, "Oh, I'm a second-generation Christian," or whatever, I don't really have a story, but everybody's story is exciting, is it not? Well, I want to introduce you to my friend Carolyn. And Carolyn, you have been a new Adventist only for how long?
Since August.
Okay, you want to talk right here in this microphone.
Since
for the
August.
people all the way in the back.
Alrighty.
And how is it that you even started this journey? Do you remember? Oh, please don't give me the credit.
Yeah. Oh,
Thank you.
that will help.
Okay, how did you start this journey?
Through you, basically.
Okay, well, you were a very unhealthy lady, if I remember
Yes.
correctly.
Yes, I was very overweight and feeling terrible.
And I suggested,
Battle Creek Lifestyle Center.
okay, anybody heard of that? So you went to the Battle Creek Lifestyle Center. What did it do for you in a nutshell?
Basically, it helped my diabetes, and I lost a lot of weight.
Okay, so you lost a lot of weight and you were a healthier person.
Yes.
And you had a lot of interest in health because of that experience.
Yes.
And I didn't ask you to, but instead, your person who was Susan Pallandini,
Oh, yeah.
who was your massage therapist there at the Battle Creek Health Center, said to you what?
We're having a supper club at the Holt Church where I lived in Holt, and she invited me to go. I went, and I knew absolutely nobody.
Yes, but you know, there's an awful lot of people that come to supper clubs and they don't always get befriended. Have you noticed that?
Right.
But there was one lady that said, Carolyn, why don't you come sit by me? Who was that?
That was Miss Anna.
Yeah. And every time that you went there, you sat with Anna and you began a good friendship with Anna.
Yes, I did, and many others there.
And many others.
Yeah.
And then there was an evangelistic series, and you went to that. You thought it was a great historical lesson.
It was very historical, and halfway through, I got very, very scared of the truth.
Yes, that happens, doesn't it? It really shakes you up when you learn some things, but there were some other things that shook you up, and you called me, and you were very distressed. Can we tell about some of the things that you
Sure,
learned?
sure.
You found out on the internet there's a lot of stuff about Seventh-day Adventists.
My friend, who I hadn't seen since high school, went to the evangelistic series as well, and she says, "Oh, Carolyn, I don't know about these Adventists."
And you said, I heard that they're really into getting you into the baptismal tank because they do what? What does the minister get?
They get paid per baptism.
Yes, they get a bonus.
A bonus.
You know what? Some of us could be making a lot more money if we had that going.
I wish I would have been on the other end when Lori answered these questions. It was like, oh boy.
I didn't laugh at you, did
No,
I?
she didn't.
You said a few other things, but we got
Yeah.
through it, and I'm really glad that we were friends because I'm not sure you would have gotten through it. You were pretty scared. You didn't even want to go back to church after all those things. But then we invited you, and you and I started something called the Ladies Club or the TLC Club.
Right.
We have a luncheon every month, and you started to befriend other people, and you found out that even though we're all crazy, that it's okay because you are too, right?
I am now.
Yeah. And as we started doing that, you said, maybe I need to do some Bible studies. And that way, the information didn't come so furious and fast, and you got more comfortable.
Right.
And then finally, you said what?
I want to be baptized.
And so we had a wonderful baptism, and we were really thankful to have Carolyn. So I hope you get to know Carolyn. She's a wonderful asset to our church. And you are a member of the Holt Church, where all
Holt
your
Church.
supper club friends are.
Yes.
And when she had a baptism, she had almost 100 people there because she had the Battle Creek world, she had the TLC world, she had the Holt Supper Club world, she had
Berrien
our friends
Springs.
world. Yeah, you went to Berrien Springs. So like all of those people became your village, right?
Yes, yes. The
So
top-
who was
yeah.
her village?
Everybody.
All those people. We'll just say
Everybody.
that.
All right.
All right, thank you. You can have a seat anywhere. All right, next I want to talk to Chris. Now, Chris, we tease her because she is from Florida. And Chris, she's been, do you think you can hold that real close to your mouth? Okay.
I'll try.
Chris was a member of my church in Plymouth at one time where my husband pastored, but then she had something that was really sad happen to her. Why don't you tell it really briefly?
Well, in 1986, my 18-year-old daughter was killed by her boyfriend of 2 years. He got drunk, and he was doing 85 miles an hour in a 25-mile speed zone and hit a tree and killed her instantly. And we had to identify her at the hospital. Then we had a funeral, and Royce and Lori was the, they helped us through the ordeal.
Okay. And it was a very difficult time. And, you know, when somebody dies, I don't know why it is, but sometimes our brains, like, get mushy, and we say really foolish things. And Chris, who was trying to make sense of why her daughter would die, was very offended and very hurt by some of the things that were said. Why don't you just share two things that were said by some of your Christian friends?
Well, first of all, I had my children in church school. They were in Pathfinders, and I could not understand why these people could say such hurting things. I had one lady come to me and tell me that apparently my daughter's guardian angel wasn't on duty that day, And that's the reason why that she was taken. And there was some other things that was said. And then I had a gentleman come to me, and he tells me, because I was having a hard time. I could not stop from crying, even in church or anywhere. And he says, you need to get over this. You need to get on with your life. And I looked at him and I said, sir, I counted all 4 of your children. Please don't tell me what to do and how I should feel. Now, these are all Adventist people in my Plymouth church. I was so devastated.
There's still good people in the Plymouth
there is
church
still.
now that we identified that.
It just happened to be that they were there.
Yes. And then that really worked on you, and it worked on you so badly that you started doing what? Well, you didn't go to the church anymore.
No, I figured with all the hurt feelings that I was feeling and the things that had been said to me, I decided it was best for my family, my 12-year-old daughter at the time, she's now 39, married with 2 sons, that it was best that I walked away from the church. And I never looked back.
And it was a long, long time. How long?
Over 25 years.
25 years. Now, I feel sad that I didn't call you and encourage you, but I'm really glad for other angels that did. Somebody from that Plymouth church
Yes.
did what?
Well, just about 2 years ago, I received this card. And I know the lady.
Yeah, you had received phone calls to donate mission trips, to provide food for funerals.
Yes.
Yes.
And I asked this lady, I said, do you really know who I am? She says, no, I don't know who you are. I said, well, why are you calling me then? She says, because your name is on my list to call. And I need whatever the occasion was, food or donation or something.
That thrilled your soul. I don't want to go too far.
Let's don't repeat what I said.
But when this other lady sent you a note, what did the note say?
Well, she loved me. She missed me. And
She knew who you were?
And she knew who I was. And so we had a bond together because she had also lost her daughter many years ago. So her kind words at that moment was refreshing. And the next week I got another card. And this went on for several weeks. So instead of me sending her a card, I picked up the phone and called her. And we were on the phone for probably over 2 hours.
I just want to make a point that sometimes we send out cards and we don't know what the reaction is. We don't know if anyone's listening or anyone's out there, but it was working on her heart.
Yes. And so one day I decided, because Lucille had been so kind to me, she had been sending me cards every week, phone calls, Sabbath school lessons, and it just touched my heart. So one day I decided I'm going to give Lucille a big surprise. I got dressed, got up on Sabbath morning, and I decided I'm going to church because I'm going to give Lucille a big old hug.
And I remember you calling me and telling me how hard it was to get there, and you just didn't know if you could make it, and if you got there, what would you do?
I wasn't sure that the people would even welcome me back. I wasn't sure that they would even speak to me or anything because I'd been out for 25 years. So I walked into the church, and
Now, this is that church where those people said bad things, so now we can clean up their good name.
It is the Plymouth Church. And I walked, one of the hardest things that, other than driving to the church, was walking back through those doors. That was one of the hardest things that I think I've done in a long time, was go back through those doors. But I walked up to Lucille and I hugged her neck and cried. And I told Lori about the situation. And even Lori was so kind to invite me to women's retreat. And
You said, I don't know if I want to go to some place like that.
I wasn't sure I wanted to be that close yet again to the Seventh-day. I was raised a Seventh-day Adventist. My folks were Seventh-day Adventists. They joined the church in 1951. So yes, I was raised a Seventh-day Adventist. But it was very hard for what happened. And over the past 2 to 3 years, with all the many cards, hugs, and Lori, and these fine ladies back here that I've got acquainted with these ladies, and there is about 12 of us that has just welcomed me back in to the fold.
So friendship has been a huge part of that.
Amen to
It wasn't
that.
just the doctrines.
No, it's friendship.
Okay. And the friendship's going to get you to the doctrines, aren't they?
Well,
Okay. I just meant, and we're hoping that someday that you'll make a commitment.
well, actually, I had my name removed from the books because I figured I didn't want no part of that people could hurt that bad. I didn't want no part of those folks.
And so you continued on, and you've been
I
You've
have
been
been-
studying your Bible. You've been coming to church. You've even
Yes.
come up in front of churches and given your testimony.
Yes, and it's very difficult.
And
Probably
we'll
if you
all
could
pray
see how
for
I'm
her,
shaking,
won't
You
we?
would know.
Yes. And we're thankful that you are willing to do this.
Oh,
and
absolutely. One day I will get rebaptized. I haven't
Is
quite
that
got
on
to
tape?
that point.
Okay.
I haven't got to that point yet because until somebody walks that mile, but I am almost to the end of the journey right now.
Well, praise the Lord. Thank you, Chris. All right. I'd like to have Anna come up. Anna is from this area, Anna Petty. And Anna, there are people in your village that maybe you don't even understand how they got into your village. But there was one day that you were driving, and what happened? This is before you became a studying Christian. You turned around in someone's driveway, and somebody talked to you, wasn't it?
No, actually, I
Oh.
was walking with my boys.
Okay.
We just moved into a new subdivision, and this man stopped in front of me before I could get the boys over the snow
Okay.
mound.
That's what it was.
Yes, and he asked directions, and I gave him directions because I'd been there just long enough to know where he was trying to get to. And then he got out of his car, asked me if I had ever heard of Stanley Products, and I hadn't, helped my boys over the hump, and got us into the house. In the meantime,
So he was being a gracious guardian.
he was. Prior to that, I had been trying to find in the Bible where Sunday worship was, where the day was
You
changed.
couldn't find it.
Couldn't find it. I got
Did
stuck.
you read the Old Testament and
I
the New
did-
Testament?
I got to the sanctuary in the Old Testament and the Gospels in the New Testament
Wow.
and couldn't get any further and couldn't find Sunday in there. And so when this guy left, he had booked a Stanley party and given me this pamphlet. He said, answer these questions if you want, and when I come back, I'll pick it up.
Well, that
So
was
when I put the-
non-threatening.
That's right. So when I put the kids down for their nap, I opened it up and I thought, I got to get the answers out of the Bible. That started the Bible studies. I don't know if you guys know Dale Munson Sr., but that was the person that got me started. Then there was a neighbor that was Adventist. I never set foot in the Adventist church for that year. I just kept doing Bible studies because I couldn't reconcile Saturday worship. It broke up my weekend because I prepared for Sunday worship.
It does
So,
break up a
yeah.
weekend. It also
And-
rests you up for the week.
Right. And so she said Dick Barron was speaking at the East Lansing Church, and I really ought to go because he is really cute. And I said, no, I don't think so. I'll let the kids go to Vacation Bible School and that. And
Whatever it takes to get you in the tank.
Right.
No.
So she kept bugging me, and finally I said, I'll go if you promise not to ask me to go again. So I went, and I came to the East Lansing Church, met the Shells and the Kinneys I've known ever since I've been Adventist. And eventually, that's where I joined the church.
So that was a long journey.
It was a long journey, and it actually started when I worked in the hospital in Flint. There was an LPN that was Seventh-day Adventist, and I learned about the Sabbath because I'd do her work when they made her work on Saturday. And she could take care of patient care, but she didn't. Back then, we had to do the beds and all that stuff. So, and then when I lived in my neighborhood, there was a tent meeting. I'd never heard of such a thing. I was taking my kids for a walk around the block, and there was a tent meeting. And so there was another.
You
seed
should have gone in
planted.
there to sit down and get cooled off.
Well, I
Could have
went
been a lot faster.
Actually, it was cool, so I went in there to kind of get the chill off a little bit. It was raining.
Wow, that's a good way to do it on hot
Right.
days. Post a tent somewhere
right.
with air
So
conditioning.
that was a seed
Like camp
planted.
meeting.
Yes. So that was a seed planted. So it really does take a village.
It does take a village, and your village was
My church family.
yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Jerry has been a member here at your church for a while, but I don't know if everybody knows her testimony, and I know her testimony. So, Jerry, you had a pastor that talked. You've been a good church member for many, many years, and you had a pastor that did some talking on some subjects. And what was that?
Well, he was talking about the Sabbath and how we should be worshiping on the Sabbath. And it was part of the Bible and hadn't been revoked. But unfortunately, although he talked about the Sabbath, and he didn't switch our services from Sunday to Saturday. And so we had this desire in us, this knowledge that there's something going on and we really need to find out more about the Sabbath.
So how did you get involved so you could find out more about the Sabbath?
Our accountant was Ralph Steffen, and he was our accountant for over 30 years. And we sat down one day and asked him, tell us about this Sabbath. And he said to us, well, he told us a little bit, and he said, well, you know, we're doing a Bible study on Friday night. Why don't you and Bill come? We're going to have a potluck beforehand, and we're going to, you'll learn more.
So was it the study or the potluck? Because, you know,
Oh, it was.
we all brought a lot of good food.
You did, yes. Lori and her husband were part of the group that were there.
Yeah, but
And yes.
So you came and you studied, and what happened?
We asked Ralph before we left that night what time church was and when.
Just like that.
Just like that. And he said, well, we have Sabbath school about 9:30, and we meet behind the choir loft. And we were there at 9 o'clock waiting in the parking lot, and and the rest is history.
Yes, and after that you started coming only at 9:35, right?
No,
Okay.
we started coming early.
Okay.
Yep.
But anyhow, that was it, and you and Bill were baptized in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, or?
Eventually, yes. We
Eventually.
made a profession of faith first.
And you had a real love. I just remember Bill had such a love for the Ellen White books that we were all so excited. We purchased him a whole volume of them because he was just excited and he was reading. And it was a thrill for us to watch you come in as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. So who was your, well, no, let's not ask.
You guys were.
Okay, one of our villages, huh? All right. Well, I'm going to end here with Wendy. Now, Wendy is from north of Lansing, but I won't say where and how. Oh, and I just put this up here. Let's try that again. Wendy, you were one of those bratty kids from Academy that had kind of an attitude that you wanted to hang out and do your own thing. Is that correct?
More or less.
Okay, and you were out of the church for how long?
I left right after high school.
As soon as graduation was done, right?
Almost. My parents would probably think that.
Okay, so
And
you
I
were
was
out
gone nearly 25 years.
25 years, as long as, but you didn't come back with gray hair or anything. But anyway, she did it earlier. Okay, and then what happened?
I remained friends with a childhood friend. We were in the church together, and she did my hair. And one day, it was right after 9/11, and I was sitting in the salon, and we were talking about the
Those
9/11.
salons are great for
They're-
women to talk at. Have you noticed?
And my friend had left the church, but she was back in the church at this time. And as she was doing my hair, we were talking about September 11th, 2001. And I was talking about, wow, you know, this is kind of scary and this and that. And one thing led to another. And she said, Wendy, you know what the truth is, and you know where you need to be.
And you went doo-doo-doo, like, whoa.
It was the catalyst that really pushed me, because it was almost like a slap in the face. And I said, wow, you're right, I do.
Now, you had a lot of things to lose if you went back to church. What was that?
Well, one thing, I was married to a non-Adventist, and
non-Christian.
non-Christian, not a churchgoer at all. So when I started to go back to church, he kind of raised the stink about it a little bit, but I kept going, and I took my baby daughter, and we just kept going and going, and anyway, after a few years of that, he said he did not sign up for that, and he did not marry me to be in church and all this, so he left me.
He wanted a party, friend, and you didn't
He wanted
fulfill
the
that.
party Wendy,
And
I
so
wasn't that way. Anyway.
Now you've been back for several years. You
Mhm.
are a member of St. John's. You do a lot of things for the St. John's Church. It's got to be difficult at times because you're a mom with kids by yourself.
Single mom, and just trying to raise my daughters the right way, and only getting them every other weekend. It's difficult because the influence is of the world one weekend, and go to church and Sabbath to school on another weekend.
And what happened to your friend that witnessed to you?
She left the church.
But you
So-
but you
but
didn't
we're
you
ve-
didn't join her.
I didn't join her, and we're still good friends. And,
So-
I
so-
say that too. You know what the truth is. You know where you need to
Yes.
be.
And it didn't
she
didn't
does.
pop her, huh?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
But you are here for the long haul
And I can't go back to the way I was. I just can't.
Praise the Lord.
I've done that, and I've done.
so your
this.
village was a friend who is no longer an Adventist, but it
Yeah,
was
but
a village.
She's going to be.
Yes, because we're going to be praying for her
Amen.
today. All right, thank you. Thank you, ladies, for all your stories. You can just stay seated. Well, we all have a village, don't we? And as you think about it, hopefully that brought up some things in your mind. There is somebody who was instrumental in your life. And maybe you were already a Christian or already an Adventist Christian, but there was someone who continued to encourage you, to pray for you, who said that God has a plan for you, who taught you in Sabbath school, who shook your hand on Sabbath morning, somebody who sent you a card when you were in academy or whatever. There are people who are going to be our village. And villages can pray for people, can they not? How many of you are praying for the people in your church? You don't have to put your hand up, but you need to be praying for each person here. I tried to think of all the people that I said I'd pray for. I started writing them down, and it was pages of them, but I am praying over those pages every day, and I'm praying for my friends, and I'm hoping that you're praying for your family members as well. John 13:35 says, "By this all men will know that you are my disciples if you love one another." I really think that love is very important. And our Sabbath school lesson, that was funny. That was the question about, is it just about love and belief? But how can you not respond to the love of God and do what he asked you to do? And another verse, Luke 6:35 says, "Love your enemies and do good and lend, expecting nothing in return, and your reward will be great, and you will be the sons of the Most High, for he himself is kind to ungrateful and evil men." And that reminds me of just a short little story. My parents had a neighbor behind their fence in North Carolina, and the fence was very, very tall. And they had a neighbor that would make fires, and they were terrified about the sparks coming to their house. They were all really reasonably close. So they really couldn't get around the fence or whatever, and they didn't know if they wanted to go all the way around the block and over to his house. So they called the fire department, and the fire department came out and said, "If you don't stop burning without an ordinance, we're going to arrest you." Well, this made him madder. How mad did he get? He built that fire up bigger and bigger until the sparks were flying. And so my dad called the fire department again because he could see them coming on his roof. And they gave him some kind of a ticket. Well, the next day, what do you think the man did? He was angry, and he decided that he was going to build a big fire again. That time, my dad didn't know what to do, so they just started praying. He continued to make fires. He wasn't getting them as big, so their house was at risk, so they quit calling the fire department. And one day, the man came over. Now, my dad is kind of a humorous man, and he always told me about his neighbor, Smokey. Yeah, Smokey came over, he said, and he wasn't talking about the police. And he came and knocked on his door, and he said, "Yeah, who are you?" Because he'd never seen his neighbor before. He said he had a singed hat. He should have known, he said. But anyway, I think that my dad added that. And he said, "I just want you to know that I have become a Christian, and I just want to apologize to you for all the things that I have done." And my dad said, "Hey, no problem. Just glad the house didn't burn. We can be friends." They shook hands. That man came over and helped my dad in the yard. He came over and helped him put up curtains. I mean, really. Mom keeps telling me, "You know what Smokey did this week?" My dad died in December, and my mom had a truck coming over to mow the lawn, and Smokey came over, and he said, "You don't need to be paying for lawn service. I'll do your yard from now on." And so I'm just like, you know what? They saw Jesus in Smokey. Who would have expected it? So we need to love our enemies and be kind to them who hurt us, and we need to offer prayer. And Luke 19:10 says, "For the Son of Man came to seek and save what is lost." And you know, that is our responsibility. Hopefully you're handing out glow tracts. Hopefully you're role modeling in your neighborhood. Hopefully you're saying kind things to people, and not judgmental things, but kind things. The Lord needs to impress their hearts, but we really need to be seeking people wherever we are. All of us have different areas and territories where we have influence, and the Lord will touch them through us if we just can be a village to them. And I pray that you all catch the village spirit and we become the village people here in this church.
Our closing song is Open My Eyes That I May See, 326.